that, I'm going to hand things over to Stephanie from the Farley Center.
I'm going to step up so I'm close to this microphone so that hopefully everyone on the phone can hear me. We have some Zoom members or members of the subcommittee that are joining us remotely. So far there's only a couple, so that's good. It'll be a little easier than last week at the task force meeting where there were 28, so this should be good. But for those of you on Zoom, we just wanted to remind you to mute yourselves. You should see a little microphone on your Zoom screen that you can click to mute and unmute. If you're joining by phone only and not on a laptop, you just have to hit *6 to mute and unmute yourself. You can go ahead and turn off the video feature on Zoom because we're not looking at you. If you could please enter your name and organization into the chat box feature. Emma will be looking for that. So then if we do have some small group discussions, which we're thinking we will today, we can move you around into virtual groups. And when we do that, it's important to identify a recorder and a reporter from your virtual groups in case we break out and it gets noisy in here and I don't tell you that then. I'll try to remember to remind you. And then you can use the chat freely throughout the meeting to let us know if you're having any problems with audio, with video, or you just have something you want to share through chat. So welcome to our Zoomers. So the objectives for the day are really just to get this subcommittee kind of launched and into action. A big part of that is going to be consumed with introductions, some level setting, an opportunity for all of you to get to know one another and get to know us, to provide a narrative of how this subcommittee kind of came to be, how we got to this point, how this relates to the work of the larger Behavioral Health Task Force. I'm Stephanie Kirshner. I'm with the Farley Health Policy Center, and Emma, Jonathan Muther are here too from the Farley Center. We're here to facilitate the meetings. And with that, we want to pass it to our co-chair to really give you a welcome and a sense of why you're here today. So we didn't decide which one of you got to go first. So
Alphabetical.
Sure.
So I want to welcome everybody to our long-term competency subcommittee.
Robert, you might want to come out to the mic because it's really hard. It's hard to hear unless you're with it.
Speak this loud. Will it work?
Well, we can ask people, but
It's going to be a long walk.
I think you can make it around the end of the table.
So thanks for coming. I know everybody's busy giving a part of their time. I know today's going to be a lot of level setting and sort of a lot of just getting started. What you're going to hear a little bit is about two phases. So there's two phases of this committee. One being where part of the agreement that DLC and the department has in our consent decree or federal consent decree is that to talk about the long-term competency plan, particularly as it relates to consent decree and how we solidify that going forward. Some of it's been done in Senate Bill 19-223, but there's still more work to do. Then what I've used as the second phase is sort of how do we get people with mental health avoiding jail altogether, so we're not even getting to court, where competency is not even raised because they're not even at court. So there's really going to be two phases of this committee to address. The first phase, we do have a federal deadline of January 2020 to get the long-term competency plan together. What you'll see is we sort of took a stab at it with the special masters of the federally court appointed specialists who are, this is their world, forensics. And we would like this committee to take that and say, yes, no, let's go with this, let's not go with that. It's not meant to be, this is what we're going to do. It's meant to be sort of a starting point because we only have like 5 months basically to get the report done. We started from scratch, there wouldn't have been enough time. So we'd like to get a lot of feedback on that, a lot of thoughts about policies, recommendations to the governor's office for legislation, for budget. And then I'm serious about the second part. The referrals keep going up. Last month we hit the most referrals ever. Every month we say that it's more and more referrals. About 100 new referrals last month. It was like 90 before that. It keeps going up and up. And a part of the solution is going to have to be the larger behavioral health, how we address folks and avoid them from going to jail.
I totally agree. And my name is Allison Butler. I'm the Director of Legal Services at Disability Law Colorado. We are also referred to as DLC. We are Colorado's protection and advocacy agency, and I just think it's sort of important. Obviously, you understand why CDHS is here, but also why Disability Law Colorado is here at the co-chair table. And do we have a video? Yeah. Do So I would love to just, it's a 2-minute video about what a P&A is, which is protection and advocacy. Just so you guys can understand a little bit more about who we are.
All people deserve basic human rights. That's why Congress created a system of protection and advocacy agencies, also known.
And until it comes on, I'll just tell you, so we are the ones who are involved in the lawsuit with DHS. We had initially filed this lawsuit back in 2011, and we're on our 3rd settlement agreement, which is now a consent decree, meaning the federal court is overseeing how we do in the, well, actually, how DHS does, and sort of abiding by what was agreed to in the consent decree. But it looks like we might have.
All people deserve basic human rights. That's why Congress created a system of protection and advocacy agencies, also known as P&As, to protect and advocate for the rights of people with disabilities, because in the past, they have not been treated equally. For most of the 20th century, the phrase out of sight, out of mind was more than just a popular saying. It was the means for dealing with an unwanted segment of the population. People with disabilities were either segregated from society, locked away in institutions, or remained isolated at home with absolutely no services, not even an education. They were abused, neglected, and forgotten. Then, in 1973, ABC news cameras exposed the filthy living conditions and poor treatment inside Staten Island's Willowbrook School, which housed people with developmental and intellectual disabilities. It shocked the nation.
The doctor had warned me that it would be bad. It was horrible.
Finally, in 1975, Congress acted. They mandated that every U.S. state and territory have an official protection and advocacy agency. P&As go by many names, but their mission is the same: to protect and advocate for the rights of people with disabilities. Together, the P&As form the National Disability Rights Network, taking on issues affecting people with all kinds of disabilities. No other organizations have the sweeping access authority that P&As have. They go anywhere services for people with disabilities are provided, from schools to hospitals to prisons and jails, to monitor conditions and listen to concerns. They make sure people with disabilities are treated equally, with dignity and respect, and never have to face the same kind of mistreatment they saw at Willowbrook. P&As ask the public for input on which issues to take on in their communities. P&As can fight against abuse and neglect in residential services, to end exploitation at work, for fair treatment in the criminal justice system, for equal access to public education and voting, for accessible communities and services and assistive technologies, and countless other issues. That's the protection and advocacy system. Click here to find the P&A for your state or territory, and subscribe for more videos from the P&A network at Rooted in Rights.
All right, so I just thought it was helpful to give a little overview of who we are, why we're here. So our mission is to protect and promote the rights of people with disabilities. That has extended to people in facilities and in the community. And I think this is a really important subcommittee because we are looking at people in facilities, in jails, and in the state mental health hospitals, but we also want to be looking at people getting into the community. That's a very big deal for us. So both looking at abuse, neglect, making sure people are not languishing without treatment, making sure people are getting appropriate treatment, as well as rights protections, things like Olmstead and the Americans with Disabilities Act saying people should be in the least restricted environment possible. So we want to make sure that we are really pushing that during this committee. So we are very excited to have you all here. I said that I definitely wanted to start out on a positive note. I think we have a lot to do, and we have a pretty short time frame, but I can say as a party to the lawsuit that we wanted to get done and we needed to get done by the time frames, and also that we have been working on this for 8 years. So we know that these are the issues that need to be addressed, and we know that you all in the room are the people that need to provide the information so that that we can get there. And we do have experts on board right here in this room, as well as Robert talked about with the special masters. So I think we have the tools that we need. We just roll up our sleeves and get it done. So thank you.
So I just wanted to tell you all, I'm going to try and get up a little bit about the Farley Center. We are thrilled to be active in this work as facilitators, to think through important changes and the work of Colorado. We have done similar facilitation and stakeholder engagement work in other states around the behavioral health system redesign. We worked in Oregon, we worked in Idaho, we worked in Virginia. So we're thrilled to be able to come and bring some of that work home and not have to get on a plane to Portland every 2 weeks. It's thrilling. This is kind of our standard slide of what we do, but really we're here to really make sure this process moves smoothly for you, to make sure that each of the subcommittees is feeling organized, ready to work, the meetings run smoothly, Zoom is working, that you feel like when you come here, you're prepared to work, have space to do that, and then get you follow-up information between meetings. Emma, Jonathan, and then Shale Wong, who's the director of the Farley Center, will also be joining for some of the subcommittee meetings. So that's what we're here to do. And with that, we want to have you have an opportunity to introduce yourselves. And we're going to take as much time as we need, which we're going to move you along, but we want to give you a chance to tell us what brought you to the work of the subcommittee. And then at the last, we'll go to the people on Zoom. If I forget that, remind me. So just your name, your organization, and really what brought you to the work. Because I think there were 600 applicants, less than 500, about 500, who wanted to be a part of this work, and you are the group that we selected to do that. So we want to get to know you and what brought you here and the work you're hoping to accomplish. So since you're on the end,
And please speak loudly so our youth.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I get to go first. Let's see. I'm Richard Martinez, go by Rick. I am a forensic psychiatrist. I'm the director of the University of Colorado School of Medicine Department of Psychiatry's forensic psychiatry program, and specifically the training program for fellows. So my interface has been over the years as director, working closely with the state hospital, with court services, because we train fellows, psychiatry fellows, to basically learn how to do these competency assessments and evaluations. So we've been working for many, many years very closely with court services. We do something like 100 to 150 of these evaluations a year through the fellowship program itself. So that's kind of how I came here, and I put my name in the hat, and I guess Robert and others decided to go ahead and include me on the committee, which I'm glad, because I do have a lot of I think experience in this at a practical level, and clinical level. It's nice to meet everyone.
Hello, I'm Brenda Peace from the Will County Attorney's Office, and I currently work in the field with the Mental Health Division, doing involuntary meds with the state hospital in conjunction with them. Also do mental health holds, needs a 72-hour hold, or a different type of hold with alcohol and drug addiction. So I work on those involuntary treatments. I'm interested in helping people that are in need of help right now, helping come to a solution to the problems we're dealing with.
Hi, my name is Mary Margaret, and I'm representing place. I was brought because I lived with a mental illness for the majority of my life, and so I have lived experience. Thank you. I am Lacey Bruman, and I represent Track Tech, which is an offender monitoring technology group. I also just came off the National Board of Directors for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I stood there 6 years, and I have been on, I don't know, probably 7 or 8 different task forces, commissions, and councils in the last 25 years.
trying to work at this issue as well as many other issues behaviorally. So
Good, we like that experience.
Hi, I'm Callie Toll. I'm with Summit Stone Health Partners, which is a mental health center in Larimer County. I am the Director of Forensic Services there, so I oversee programs from co-responders all the way through to competency restoration education, our problem-solving courts, including mental health courts, and any criminal justice program that we have. And my experience over the years has been with our AIM and wellness courts, so our programs that work with severe and persistent mental illness for individuals on probation. So competency has been something that I've dealt with for a very long time professionally through those programs, and just at a place where I want to make a difference and see a change in our community.
Can you please project just a little bit more? I'm hearing it's hard.
I'm Juan Silva. I'm a senior deputy district attorney here in Denver. Besides being with the DA's office in Denver, I'm also a board director for Mental Health Colorado. That's how I learned of this opportunity. With the DA's office, I'm also on the DA's advisory council for mental health issues, along with the doctor over here. Besides that, with as we all may know, juvenile issues regarding mental health may not be exactly the same as for adults. Oftentimes, we on the back end with being a lawyer, prosecutor, and actually dealing with competency and restoration actually in court, have found that many of the laws or many of the guidelines put in place don't necessarily impact or are directly focused on the juveniles. So I was moved in the DA's office to the juvenile unit currently, where I help run the youth family treatment court for substance abuse and mental health issues, trying to get everything in line with how the juvenile system will work. I also help with in-bog trainings with the judges here in Denver and other counties, trying to get them up to speed with the changes in legislation. So I come to this, I'm tired of learning everything on the back end. Then with Mental Health Colorado, now I'm at the beginning now with some of the legislation that our group helps rights or does right. It gets passed, and now hopefully with this, we'll be able to get a better understanding of exactly what's being done and how we're supposed to actually implement it in court. Because the judge, I'm sure, is aware what is thought as the plan doesn't necessarily isn't it actually effectuated sometimes like that as in the actual court system, and sometimes what the good intentions are sometimes cause more problems than meant to cause. So hopefully I'll get some better understanding now.
Hello everyone, I'm Brian Gonzalez. I am a licensed clinical social worker, licensed here in Colorado, and probably like many of you, this is not where I thought I would end up in my career, but the pathway was set. I thought I'd be a therapist falling out of Epiphanies, but mental health system doesn't work that way. So I'm the assistant dean for academic affairs at the Graduate School of Social Work at TU, also the prisoner advocate for IRB, so I oversee all of the research and have approval for anything that's within the criminal justice system. And prior to faculty, I was executive director for a large nonprofit that provided mental health and substance treatment in county jails and community corrections.
I am Laura Warner. I am Deputy Director of Operations at San Juan Basin Public Health. I am based in Durango. I guess I'm hoping to bring a couple lenses to the table here. Local public health is one of them. Rural Colorado encompasses quite a bit, but hope I can bring that voice to the table. And then also at our agency, we just recently started a court liaison program. So that was one of the programs that came out of Senate Bill 1923. And so we are serving the 6th and 22nd judicial districts through that program. So that'll be really exciting overlap with participating on the subcommittee. So I'm really excited to be a part of this work to solve a very, very complex problem.
Hi, I'm Corey Robinson Rosenberg, professor of pediatrics and psychiatry at CU School of Medicine. For a number of years, I directed the program JFK Partners, which is a companion program to the legal center, focused on people with developmental disabilities. And I think that lens of the needs of people with developmental disabilities, particularly dually diagnosed individuals with intellectual disability, autism, and co-occurring mental health problems is the work that I've been doing for the past many years. most recently worked to get funding for a crisis pilot program, particularly for people with dual diagnosis, because of the difficulties in accessing mental health services. So this the report just got posted, but this was an ability to assist communities in bringing together mental health and the DD system to provide crisis intervention services. And one of the things that I'm just about to get started with that I think is possibly going to be relevant down the road is the state is funding through Division of Vocational Rehab and Healthcare Policy and Finance, an Office of Employment First. And the target audience for this Office of Employment First, which will be located at the university, are people with significant disabilities and working toward competitive integrated employment for people with significant mental illness, intellectual disability, and traumatic brain injury. That's where you're just about to get started.
My name is Jonathan Seamus. I preside at over 10,000 feet of the highest court in the land. I also have a competitive problem-solving court. In addition to that, I am chair of the Judicial Education Subcommittee on Mental Health, and also serve on the Suicide Prevention Commission and also the Board of Post Individual Co-Responder Unit, and I'm part of the Colorado judicial team that's trying to decriminalize mental health generally in the state of Colorado by trying to see whether or not we can implement this sequential interest model across the state. What brings me here, I suppose, in the long term is I remember watching the Willowbrook TV series when I was growing, before it's growing up, and I guess I don't understand why I thought Geraldo Rivera was so cool at the time. But I guess that was his highlight of his career. In any case, more seriously, is just how incredibly frustrated myself and my colleagues are in the lack of resources and just watching basically the train wreck as the train slowly passes by with our impotency to really effectively do anything about it. Anecdotally, in my quote right now, I can think of one moment it took over a year just to get the competency evaluation. Another guy who was found incompetent and been in competency restoration in custody on basically traffic violation for over a year. And I think we can do better, so I'm hoping that we can.
Top stories. All right. Heard from me.
Real quick, take a second to talk about the camera in the room. So
Sure.
acknowledge the camera in the room. Go ahead.
So we have resident PS here filming, which you will see. So no reason to be alarmed since this is a public meeting. Quite a bit of media will probably be coming to meetings in the future. They did it at the last meeting as well, so I would expect them to be here. I'll go over some more media stuff and communications with you guys in a little while in the program, but that is who is with us today.
And I'm Kyle Brown. I'm the Senior Director for Regulatory Affairs at UC Health. Obviously, we're a large health system. We have 12 hospitals in Colorado now. We're committed to being part of the solution in terms of mental health treatment and ensuring that folks are getting treatment and not ending up in jail in the judicial system. My personal background, having worked in the policy space for a number of years here in Colorado, I was involved in Senate Bill 16-169, which tried to deal with sort of jail and whether or not folks in crisis could be held in jail. We came back a year later and augmented the crisis system, and that was in my previous capacity in the governor's office as a policy advisor. So I've been involved with mental health and specifically folks in crisis for several years.
I just want to ask one more time that we project as much as possible. I know it's uncomfortable as you're introducing yourselves, but people who are on Zoom are having a hard time hearing the introduction. So it's not as booming as you could be. Sorry.
I'm Sasha Rai. I direct mental health services to the Denver Sheriff's Department. So the city and county jails in Denver, I think we provide the largest number of referrals to Pueblo. For competency restoration, we have 2,500 people incarcerated at any given time. 20% of them are antipsychotic medications. So we have a large, severely mentally ill population. I also run the forensic psych service for Denver Health. In that capacity, I do evaluations as well as for the city and county courts. They have a separate competency evaluation. And one of the things that we are developing is a pilot program so that we decrease the number of competency requests at city level by diverting those people for competency phase. We've been working with the DA's office and kind of getting this pilot program running, and hopefully we can replicate this on district level once we get it running on the city level. And I trained in forensic psychiatry under Dr. Martinez, sitting there. I am an assistant professor of psychiatry at the CU School of Medicine too.
Hi everyone, my name is Moses Gur, despite what my name tag says. A lot of familiar faces around the table, so sorry for repeating, and for those of you who haven't met yet, hi. I am with the Colorado Behavioral Healthcare Council. I'm the Director of Policy and Member Engagement. I'm also the current chair of the Legislative Task Force concerning the treatment of individuals with behavioral health disorders in the criminal justice system. And yes, I have practiced saying that in there. For those of you who don't know, CBHC, the Colorado Behavioral Healthcare Council, is the statewide membership association for Colorado's 17 community mental health centers, 4 managed service organizations, as well as 2 specialty clinics. Our members and us as well have been involved in policy and programs and engagement around this arena dating back decades. We have found letters that CBHC has written on behalf of our members to the state on ways we want to engage in solutions to the problems here from years and years ago. And in most recent years, we've been involved in legislation such as Senate Bill 207, which was mentioned, 249 through 251 and 18, which was mentioned, and of course the legislation that was passed in the past year. That being said, our members are very committed to being part of the solution for these problems, and I'll be primarily representing them as a whole today, even though many of them are here at the table as well. Personally, my resume pretty much goes forensic mental health all the way back, so I've been very privileged to have a nice little hors d'oeuvre platter of experience across the whole sequential intercept model, and to see in bite-sized pieces how all of these different issues really intertwine. So I decided to look at them very systemically with this group. Thank you for having me.
Hi, I'm Carly Salon. I work for the Mental Health Center of Denver. I'm the Assistant Program Manager for the Crisis Intervention Response Unit, which oversees our co-responder program, our probation liaisons, our Denver City Jail Navigator, and now the Bridges Court Liaison Program. Worked closely with Dr. Ryan in the DA's office, developing the competency diversion program that he was just speaking about. So we're very excited to get that online and hopefully reduce the number of competency evaluation referrals. I worked my way up through the ranks at MHCD, started as a case manager and then worked in jail for a number of years before taking one of the assistant program managers positions on the team. The individuals that we'll be discussing and the individuals that languish in jail without treatment are the people I've served, and the people I've served and advocated for my entire career. And I've seen firsthand the issues and difficulties and obstacles that arise when people are in jail for long periods of time awaiting competency evaluation and restoration. And I'm very excited to work with this group to try to solve some of those problems and tie up those loose ends.
I'm Jessica Russell. I'm the Director of Princeton Recovery Services at Health Solutions, which is the Community Behavioral Health Center in Pueblo and also covers Los Animas and Huerfano counties. Princeton Recovery Services is the specialty wing for Health Solutions for substance use, co-occurring, and forensically involved individuals. So I oversee our co-response program, our Bridges Liaison program, as well as just outpatient conditional release services for individuals conditionally released from the state hospital, and individuals involved with probation, parole, and our behavioral health treatment court, which is our problem-solving court for the 10th Judicial District. I asked to be a part of this committee because I'm passionate about finding ways for our clients and our individuals we interact with to find a way to live their best lives. And though criminal justice involvement may be a part of some individuals' lives, that I don't believe that it doesn't have to be the only way individuals get to their best life.
My name is Ben Harris. I am with the Department of Healthcare
Healthcare Policy and Financing, otherwise known as HICPA. We are the executive agency that runs Colorado's Medicaid program, so we serve about 1 in 4 Coloradans in the state. I work on the team that helps run the Accountable Care Collaborative, which manages the regional accountable entities, otherwise known as RAIs. These are entities that merge the contracts of the former BHOs, so the behavioral health organizations, and another contract that provided physical health care coordination into one year, about a year into that program. I know many of you from other task forces as well, and so you've heard me say this, but Medicaid is actually the new kid on the block for this issue, largely because for the longest time we did not cover single working adults until 2014, and so we are quickly trying to get our systems confident at this population. It's made some great headway on re-entry, specifically from state prisons, but we have a long way to go to make sure our systems are competent to handle these individuals and their healthcare needs. So I am really here. My background is actually in primary care system integration. I worked in HIV care at the start of my career and just saw a lot of interesting novelties that came up when it came to integration of social services, behavioral health, physical health for those individuals. So I'm really interested in how we can apply those lessons. And I think to Robert's point too, I think our systems are trying to become more competent and really think proactively about how do we actually prevent these issues from starting.
My name is Lucia Ohanian. I go by Lucy as well. That's easier for everyone. I'm a Colorado State Public Defender. My current role is Chief Deputy. So I was a trial lawyer in Arapahoe County for 10 years, and I've been an administrator for 2 years for our state agency. Relevant to this conversation, some of my roles as a Chief Deputy include overseeing our social worker program. I'm on our steering committee, the steering committee for the Bridges program. Along with 2 training directors, we're responsible for training our agency on all things, including litigation and advocacy around mental health, and also in combination with our policy liaison, Maureen Kane, many of you know, work on policy changes from a defense lawyer perspective. Obviously, it's important for us to be at this table since I think we represent the majority of folks who are subjected to competency processes, with really few exceptions. And so I'm really here to voice the heartbreak and frustration that our lawyers have over seeing our clients deteriorate and be put in ad seg and be naked in cells and be hurting themselves, and the fact that they sit in jail so long. So really, this is something that is so hard for us as we see this happening to our clients. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm glad this is happening. I hope to also bring a voice in addition to what Allison might say, the sort of legal rights of the defendant, the legal rights in the criminal case, not just their rights in the disability world. So it's nice to meet you all.
Hi, my name is Alexis Geis, and I am with Colorado Access, and we are a community-based nonprofit health plan based out of Denver and Aurora. And we are contractors for HICPA, as been mentioned, for 2 of the large RAI regions of the state. So I bring that Medicaid perspective in terms of how the Medicaid system works and how the various components, that system level lens, that I think is something that I can bring to this work. I'm a psychiatrist. I know many of you from decades of practicing in this community, so it's great to see some old faces. I think what I hope to contribute is that how Medicaid is a payer and how the Medicaid program as a sort of integrative system level entity can help integrate some of these solutions in a scalable way. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity and looking forward to the work.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sue Coffey. I am work in film and television and casting. So I don't have any of your background, and I'm amazed that I'm here and very grateful to be here. I requested to come as I have a son who the last 15 years has gone through the Denver facilities, a variety of them. Just in this past year, we've been in a half a dozen of them, and he is still without employment. He still is without an advocate. He is still fallen in the cracks, and it has been a very long journey for him. He's been in and out of Denver Health, a variety of different facilities all over Denver. He has not been charged with any criminal situation yet, but we're very close. I am a facilitator for the American Federation for Suicide Prevention. I primarily work with youth. So I meet with a lot of young people all the time and ask them to tell me why they feel they were not able to help one of their dear friends and or one of their siblings. And that information is what I bring to the table as a layperson that would really love to see the whole situation bend towards caring for the individual once they've established that they have a serious mental illness that goes on for years. In the state of Colorado, nothing has helped my son. And so I am here, hopefully, to be part of this next wave of what can we do to get him employment, what can we do to get him an advocate.
Hi, I'm Peggy Heil, and I work for the Department of Public Safety. And I primarily just focus on behavioral health initiatives as they relate to criminal justice populations. I bring a history of working on behavioral health programs in corrections. And one of the things that when I was hired, my division director asked me to focus on was the fact that sheriffs were upset that a lot of people were in their jails that they felt should be in treatment and not in jail, and trying to get those people to treatment.
My name is Joy Hart. I'm Chief of Behavioral Health Services for the Colorado Department of Corrections. Prior to my career in corrections, I was immersed in the community mental health system, worked with adjudicated youth, and I have unfortunately seen people that I work with as youth in the correction system. And although I believe we strive to provide very good quality care in the prison system, that is not where treatment for mental illness should be occurring. So I'm very pleased to be here.
All right, so we're moving to Zoom. I'll call each of your names out based on how I see it in the Zoom box, which could be an abbreviation. Please unmute yourself and then introduce yourself. So first is Derek Harvey.
Okay, hopefully I've got it unmuted, but hello everyone. My name is Derek Harvey. I'm the Chief of Police in Canyon City. How I first got on the pathway to this subcommittee is about 7 years ago, working for the town of Vail. We had a resource issue where we had folks that were in need of behavioral health treatment and did not have the resources. And in one particular case, there was a young man who every year kind of went through a cyclical event where his medication would stop working, he would stop taking it, and trying to get involved with that young man's life early to prevent him from becoming involved in the justice system. The mental health system unfortunately failed, and we weren't able to get him medicated and stabilized. And unfortunately, it took him getting arrested by 3 different agencies for different offenses before his competency was called into question. He was sent to the state hospital, and about 3 months later, he came back medically stabilized and restored. So that kind of started me on the pathway of trying to find a better way to prevent people who really shouldn't be involved in the justice system from getting involved in the first place, and trying to build preventative measures on the front end, both for law enforcement and better partner with behavioral health organizations so that we can, effectively serve this population. The other piece is really somewhat personal. I have some family members with mental health disorders, and I want to make sure that they are able to access the care that they need. But, looking at law enforcement in general, we constantly put people into the same basket, and we really shouldn't. We should look at people as individuals and find out ways to correct behavior. And if that stems from a mental health disorder, it's law enforcement's job to figure out what the root cause of that is and be supportive for the solution instead of simply putting a round peg in a round hole, so to speak, that doesn't necessarily fit there. So I'm excited to be part of this group and the work that we're going to be doing here. And I've heard many familiar names around the office. I'm sorry I'm not able to be there in person today, but hopefully I'll be able to join you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Joey Bunch. Joey, if you can hear us, can you please unmute yourself and then introduce yourself? We will try to come back to him. Raina Shainer.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm an individual with the lived experience, and I'm a several times suicide attempt and lost survivor, with my first attempt being at the age of 4. So I've had approximately 4 decades of experiences in the behavioral health system and have witnessed some things, experienced things myself, and hear other stories. And I just recently lost a friend to suicide. So I tend to see things through a trauma-informed lens, knowing that the special population has a lot of trauma history, and it's where I want to, my philosophy is that we're all interconnected and live in this world together, so we have to do things as a team. And so it's wanting to come together and share perspectives. And I also want to say that I also appreciate the behavioral health system a lot for, changes that it's made to my life. So I just want to see us be able to work together and create better systems and see people first. And I'm really excited about being part of this.
Thank you. Anna Weaver Hayes.
Good afternoon. This is Anna Weaver Hayes. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Psychiatric Society, and I'm interested because this issue is very important to my members.
Thank you. Next is Lauren. Lauren, can you hear us? And also try to circle back to her. Next, Ashley Phillips. What about Stephanie Glover? Right, and then I have a variety of phone numbers without a name attached, so I'm going to read the last 4 digits. And if it's you, please unmute and introduce yourself. 8738.
And just as a reminder, if you're calling in just on the phone, you have to hit *6 to unmute yourself. Your mute button on your iPhone or on your cell phone won't unmute you in Zoom.
Okay, that was connected to a Zoom. What about 9742?
So I think some of these people are not on the subcommittee, so they may just be.
Hi. I can go back. This is Ashley Phillips. That *7 or whatever I just did really helped.
Okay. Okay. I think that we've gone through everybody.
It's Ashley
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can come back to trying to get the voices included in the phone. Inherently, Zoom is challenging, and joining meetings remotely is challenging. So those of you out in the ether, we appreciate your patience. There are, I think, a few members of the public here, and we have a minute if you'd like to introduce yourself briefly. If you're not on the subcommittee, just so we know who's here, unless you don't.
I can start. My name is Frank Greeley. I'm the Director of Government Community Relations for the Colorado Behavioral Healthcare Council. Moses described our organization, who we represent. Probably one of the few licensed clinicians and registered lobbyists in the state. So I've got both a clinical background, but I've also worked on a number of the legislation and bills that Kyle and Moses talked about. I'm a member of the Safety Net Subcommittee and currently a member of the Behavioral Health Planning Advisory Council and past chair of the governor-appointed Transformation Council.
Terry Scopedio, I'm with the Colorado Mental Health Institute and Forensic Services Division Director.
My name is Margaret Elmer. I'm the president and acting executive director of NAMI Colorado, and I'm here because the competency restoration process is a major concern of our community, of family of individuals living with a mental illness, as well as the individuals themselves.
And we encourage you to participate in the group discussions today. And then the communications team from CDHS is here as well.
Mark Techmar, Director of Communications.
I'm Madeline, Google Deputy Director. And Philip's here from PBS, so that's good.
And something while we're I think I want to convey something from the larger, the umbrella task force, which has an executive committee with Director Barnes and Lieutenant Governor Primera, as well as several department heads. But the communication from the governor is that everything is on the table. There needs to be real conversation and what's real solution for how we go. I think we're really, really happy with where DLC and the department came with the consent decree, but it's really just the first step. Mike's going to present a little bit about the consent decree, and it has a lot of things the department needs to get better at and work at. But we're really interested in the larger system as a whole, and I just want to convey from the governor's office that everything is on the table. Let's not be shy about talking being bold. Obviously, $200 million ideas are going to be difficult to execute, but everything is on the table. And I we were remiss if I didn't say this. We spend between federal dollars and state dollars, $1.2 billion in health and behavioral health in Colorado between all the different state agencies. That includes Medicaid, which is the largest contributor. But we're ranked 43rd, and then we're ranked 7th in suicide. So I think all the committees are challenged with whatever we come up with has to be about what's best for the citizens of Colorado. But let's not forget the 1.2 billion, and are we investing that correctly? And how do we invest it better? Not to say we can't add to that, but we need to look at that first and make sure that our system is set up in a way that 1.2 billion is effective, right? And we need to make sure it's effective, and then talk about what do we need to add.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to take some liberties with the agenda since we moved through the introductions quickly and get through a little bit more of our housekeeping level setting work, and then take a break before Mike does his presentation. So this is we're going to ignore that, and we'll come back for a break after Summer and I kind of get through some of this that we want to hear from you about. As Robert just said, this is hard work. We're all coming at this from different perspectives. Some wear multiple hats. Business models could potentially be affected by big changes that are being encouraged. And then all of you, some of you even already said today that you have working history together, and what that is, I don't know. But trying to figure out ways to acknowledge this and still be able to do some of the things that Robert's describing that are big and audacious goals is something that we just felt was important to call out as we get started working together. That I think nobody is naive to think this isn't going to be challenging, and there's not going to be times when there's disagreement, but usually out of that comes solution. And in the work, I know that Robert and Summer heard me say this last week, but in the work we've done in other states around these big systems redesign efforts is really that the solution, though ultimately very, very important, isn't always the most important thing for the individuals. If people feel like their ideas are heard and considered and what the ultimate solution ends up being, we find that generally people can come to a center. And so that's what we're hoping we can build in these spaces, in the subcommittees and in the task force. It's really a place where some of these disagreements, some of these challenges really are surfaced and discussed in a way that feels healthy. And then it ultimately comes to a better solution. I don't know if somebody would add anything. No? Okay. I stole this from her task force slide. The group agreements I've also kind of adopted. We had kind of gone back and forth about study time and steering and subcommittee coming up with these, but instead decided we'll give you a place to start and see if there are additions that you want to make. And Jonathan's going to be madly typing comments that come from this so that we can make additions to this subcommittee that make sense. But really beginning with charitable assumptions, and then we're all trying to do good work. I think really most of you can say that you're trying to get to generally the same place from maybe a different starting point. And so really coming to the work with that assumption about one another is generally helpful. That everyone participates, which sometimes means that those of us that are more eager to participate need to step back and create space for those that are less eager to really step up. And the Farley Center will be encouraging people to participate as we go. To be tough on ideas, soft on people, I think it's really critical that we're tough on ideas, that you're tough on each other in a constructive way, but it doesn't become personal. Though we may have different ideas about what solutions need to be or what recommendations, how they should be voiced, we can be hard on those ideas and still be considerate of one another. The next one around role acknowledgement, I think, is really hard in this kind of work because we generally come at it not only from a professional but from a very personal perspective. And both of those things need to come out. When voting on elements that down the road, I think it's important to kind of be thinking of what is the role, what is the vision, what is the lens I'm looking through in terms of how I'm voting. Am I representative of an organization, am I representative of self? And that's something to kind of think about as the task or the subcommittee work evolves. To obviously stay solution oriented and to listen to one another. We'll do our best to start in on time. We're ahead of schedule now, which is good. And to be respectful and use words thoughtfully. So these are kind of just things that most of us do as we are working in our professional roles, and we try to do, but they're certainly not all encompassing. So are there things that from the group you feel like, I'm sorry, I'm standing in front of you, I'm trying to use that mic. Are there things that we should add to think through adding to this list of working agreements together? Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we try our best to have meaningful participation from people who are remote. I live in Durango. I know I'm not going to be able to be at every meeting, and I really, really want to be so badly. So, but I mean, because I live in Durango, I do a lot of remoting into meetings. It's so frustrating when you can't hear, and yeah, go rural areas.
Yeah, and we're really working on that. And what we're hoping for, as a little side note, is to really get some standing meetings for these subcommittees, because there's 3 of them. So we're running to all of them, and then the primary task force to get standing meetings scheduled for us. I'm hoping this can happen in like September. I think July and August are a little nuts. And then really get in a space where we have reliable audio, because I think usually the video, it's usually the audio. So we're sensitive to that, and we are really going to work on it. Yeah.
Can I just on that, being the whole person, have we made any considerations that some of the meetings could be all Zoom?
Summer? We haven't talked about that. Can you say a little bit more about that?
So that way, like, the meeting would actually be for all participation via Zoom. So that way, it's also helpful for time.
Yeah, I think it's something worth considering. And maybe we can think about which meetings that would be fruitful for when there's not a necessity to really be collaborating face to face. having had mixed results with Zoom meetings. So we, yeah.
I was going to suggest on that from a rural community, it'd be wonderful if we did meetings that were not all in Denver. So that maybe you could see the rest of the state and see some of the things that we all struggle with in rural counties that, you know, there's not a bus after 5 p.m. and you can see it when you watch people walking to places, things like that.
Yeah.
So for those of you who are from organizations, if you have conference rooms that are well equipped, please let the Pro Center know because this was sort of all kind of put together in a rush. And would love to have people offer up space for meetings that are really good technologically advanced. So
yeah.
The organization has something.
Certainly, yeah. And we'll make sure you have contact information for us too. There was another hand, I think. Yeah, Allison.
I just want to mention or say that I really hope to hear from the individuals and from parents. We have one parent in the room, and maybe other people wear that hat as well. Most of us are representing organizations, and we can really get focused on sort of organizationally and process and that kind of thing. And we have to always remember that we are talking about the individuals in this. So I really, really hope to get some good participation from the individuals with experience and parents. Encourage them really to do that.
Anyone on Zoom want to pipe in? We'll be relying on you to unmute yourself, or you can send things in via chat. I feel like I'm looking. Are you out there?
Yes. I'm just trying to figure out how to work all this stuff.
Yay!
So anyways, I do live on the Western Slope. So I have the lived experience, so I can kind of bring that perspective to the table, if that's helpful.
Great. Anyone else on Zoom? We'll give you a second to unmute. Okay.
Stephanie, just going back to the group agreements real quick, what I would also just add to this is that all of you are kind of ambassadors for this long-term competency subcommittee. And so if at any point you are feeling frustrated, concerned, want to see things done differently, want to have different things discussed, we can't do anything about it unless we know about it. So rather than go out to the community and be like, oh my God, I'm so frustrated, make sure you tell us. This is why the Farley Center is here, because they're a unbiased participator as a facilitator. So you need to let them know what your concerns are, if you have any, so that we can go ahead and tackle it right away.
I bet most of you will have my cell phone by the end of this. That's how it usually seems to go. I get a text message. Go ahead.
I was going to say, and I don't know if this is if you'll talk about it soon or whether this is kind of a principle that we do, but I imagine that our conversations could potentially balloon to beyond our scope. So I think it's helpful for all of us to keep in mind what our actual problem that we're trying to solve here is, which is very much long-term competency. And so there are other subcommittees out there that are thinking much larger. So there may be just a process where we're saying, that's a great idea, but not appropriate for this subcommittee to solve. I've just been on a lot of subcommittees or task force that inevitably have really good ambitions, but as a result have scope creep.
Yeah.
And we don't actually accomplish what we've asked. So I think just holding ourselves in check, maybe it's the time management, task management that's helpful for our success.
Yeah. And I didn't put my parking lot slide in today. But that's kind of the parking lot idea. Is when things kind of, though they're important, they may not be immediately relevant. So we can put them up there and make sure that if we need to follow up with something, we can. If it falls within the scope of another subcommittee, we can move things around. That's another kind of, am I right in front of your camera? Back of my head to be on PBS for 3 hours. But we also are kind of, we're going across the subcommittees, so we can kind of act as that kind of liaison. Yeah.
You're welcome to ask the umbrella task force to take something on or an issue you want to ask them. I know one of the things that a number of us are asking is the financing structure between different state agencies. It's not really a fit for any of the subcommittees. So if you have something you want to ask the larger task force to take on or to charge that doesn't fit the long-term competency, don't speak up and Farley Center folks will take it back.
But it's two things we need to be mindful, and I think what you're saying is right. At the same time, all of this so intersected in so many different areas. If we don't if we're not at least mindful of where what we need to do does intrude on other areas, I think we're not going to get very far either. So the challenge is what's that balance between staying within our mandate, but also making sure we properly and effectively. And I would just add on to just ask the facilitators and the team that if you see this group sort of getting into a territory that's already been talked about in other groups or vice versa throughout this whole big structure, that you give us some flags so that we know we're not just having a conversation one had last week.
Yeah.
I have a strong suspicion at some point the safety net committee and this committee are going to have a joint meeting and talk about how those could intersect. There's going to be a lot of intersecting between the safety net.
Well, and I will kind of say, I mean, to put myself out there, this is not my wheelhouse. Like this, your content expertise, your subject matter expertise, I'm learning quite a bit as we go. So if you feel like we're missing something, just scream parking lot. I'm open to that too, because you're going to have a sense probably at some point when there's scope creep that maybe we won't catch. So please, you can pull your ear, you can tap me on the shoulder, you can say, it will make sure we do that. Move on. Anything else? So what we'll do, Jonathan's been noting these, and when we come back next time, we'll have these revised to make sure they reflect this conversation.
I'm going to skip around a little bit. So again, good afternoon, everyone. You've all gotten several emails from me. For those of you on the phone, this is Summer Gathercole. Thanks for putting up with the deluge of emails. This has come together really, really quickly, so we just appreciate everyone's flexibility. And what the things that I kind of want to share is that, as kind of Robert suggested, everything is on the table, which is really exciting. I think it's rare that the stars align and that there's a political will to say, how do we make the behavioral health system in Colorado work? And the way that I really like to think about it is that as I'm out and about and I'm talking to different people and saying, what other states have figured this out? Like, who else has tackled this? Who else has a comprehensive system? What I hear is, oh, Washington does this very well, and Virginia does this piece well, and Massachusetts does this piece well, but there's no state that anyone says is comprehensively tackled and has a strong behavioral health system. And so years from now, I want people to look back at this work and say, Colorado figured it out. Colorado is setting, setting the star example for the rest of the nation. And so that's really why I think this work is so important. We do, as reference, we do have 3 subcommittees. They all of your work will kind of flow up to the main task force. So Robert and Allison are members, are ex officio members of the task force, so they will report up at those monthly meetings to let the task force know what the outcomes are, what are the recommendations from this committee up to the task force. You all are welcome to attend the task force meetings. Those meet monthly. We'll make sure that you have that information. You're not required to attend those meetings. We're already going to be meeting twice a month, so we're already going to be keeping you pretty busy, and there's going to be work in between those. So just to kind of let you know how this is all going to come together. I agree, there's going to be ideas that come up. That's probably going to be a little bit outside the scope of this subcommittee. So we're going to have to hold each other accountable, talk about if there's other groups or other committees, subgroups, working groups, whatever you want to call them, if they're already tackling that, then we need to make sure that we're aware of that. So really holding each other accountable is going to be, I think, key. When, obviously for this subcommittee, we've got some pretty specific goals that we have by January of 2020. The work is going to be ongoing after that. For the full task force, our deliverable is to have a blueprint or a roadmap by June of 2020. When I think about that, and I think about all of the reports that have come out over the last couple of years from different working groups and task force, we have such a great foundation of information to build from. We have lots of research, we have lots of data, we have lots of suggestions around goals and strategies that we can use. What I want to make sure that the blueprint includes is not just the goals and strategies, but the tactics and the objectives and the public policy and the staffing and the budgeting. So it's really, really specific, laid out year by year, that's realistic and really feasible, so that in 3 years from now, Governor Polis can look back and say, okay, in year 1, we said we're going to do this. What happened? What didn't happen? Year 2, we said we would do this. What happened and what didn't happen? And that's truly accountability there, so that we can make sure to measure our progress along the way and understand where some of those barriers are. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes kind of talking about how the overall work of the task force comes together with the subcommittees. Are there any questions about any of that? No. Okay. So the other thing I just wanted to touch base around for a few minutes is the less exciting stuff, the logistics. We circulated and then asked all of you to look at the expectations and guidelines document. For those of you who haven't signed it yet, it's in your binder. So if you can take a look at it. The reason that we shared this with everyone and asked you to look at it and sign it is because we really want to make sure that everyone understands what a commitment this is. We are meeting every 2 weeks or twice a month for the next year. There's going to be work that's going to be needing to be done in between the meetings. So this is a heavy, significant lift, and we want to just make sure that you understand that going into it, and that everyone has a clear recognition of that. Also circulated the board and commissions training. So you should have that in your email. Please go ahead, if you haven't done it already, go ahead and complete that. If you haven't, I'm sure you'll be getting a nudge from us in the next week or so to make sure to get that done. And then the other thing that you will find in your binders is our travel policy. So for those of you who are coming from outside the metro area, if you need travel reimbursement, you've got your travel guidelines in there, and we'll be following up with you about some additional information on that as well. Any questions on logistics? Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Madeline with our communications. Oh, yeah.
For this committee, it's important that understand that the Farley Center and Summer actually, Summer's reporting to the executive director, because OBH does have a stake in the conversation, and it may conflict with some that come up. So when it comes to specifically this committee, but all committees, Summer does not report to the issue, reports to the executive director of the department, and they're specifically designed an executive committee, which is the lieutenant governor and all department heads. So I just want to put it out there because OBH does have, particularly this one, has a stake in sort of what it's saying. So we are not completely objective to the conversation. So I think that's important. If you want to speak up and are concerned about being heard.
No, thanks for bringing that out. I appreciate that reminder. Okay, with that, I'm going to ask, I want to turn things over to Madeline with our communications team, and then we'll take a quick break.
Okay, let's talk about some more fun stuff. Communication. So we want to let you guys know up front that our goal with you on your behalf, both in representing the task force and of course all of you guys, is to be very intentional in what we do, be transparent in everything we do, and of course create some excitement. This is really, really exciting, and we want the public and the media to know that, which of course is why we have some here and on the phone. So with that, number one, where you guys can find information. Start with the website. On the Department of Human Services website, there is a page for the task force. That's where all updates are going to be posted. Meeting updates, dial-in information, that'll have contact information, anything you guys need, start there before we start blowing up Summer's email, which is also an option. Next, go to Twitter. We'll also be tweeting, posting on Twitter all the meeting updates. Everything that will be on the website will also be posted to Twitter, so you can double up, but please follow us. We're also posting really fun things. So hopefully, if you guys are following the Behavioral Health Task Force on Twitter, you will have seen that we tweeted about the meeting last week on the 1st, and you guys might notice us taking some more pictures today and posting about you. So we would love to engage with you on Twitter as our partners and representatives. Next, we have a newsletter. So keep an eye out for this coming into your inboxes in the next week or so. I'm actually in the back frantically working on it right now. This will include all of the meetings, putting our due diligence in just to give you guys recaps on every single meeting that happens. This will be coming bi-weekly, so you'll see it obviously twice a month. And then it will also include some exciting things that we're working on, challenges that we're seeing. We'll have potentially some features on you guys. So if I call you and need a bio and a headshot, don't be surprised. We'll have other profiles of clients and of course other ideas. So if you see something in there that you hate, or if you see something in there that you really, really like and want to see more of, if there's something that you feel like is missing, please tell us, because this is both to keep you informed. We know that these all 4 groups are really, really big, and we want to feel like you're getting to at least know what your peers not inside this room or on the phone. Also, media. We obviously have some in the room and on the phone. So those of you that are excited to talk to media, great. Those of you that aren't, that's okay too. If you are contacted, and you very well might be, this is really big and exciting stuff, and you guys are the experts in this, give us a heads up. You can email me, Madeline Rubel, or Mark Checkmeyer in the back. He's our Director of Communications, my boss. So just give us a heads up. That's not to tell you that you cannot do anything. That's just to help you, right? Keep an eye out for media trainings coming from us so that we're all singing the same song and on the same page and representing ourselves and each other. We can stay accountable to that. And there may be opportunities where we call and say, you know, whoever, some outlet, Channel 9 would like to do a feature on you, and we think you uniquely have a really great perspective to tell. Are you open to that? Yes or no? Great, and we'll go from there. So both ways, give us heads up, and we may or may not be calling you with opportunities as well. And then finally, share our stuff. Everything on social, anything you see in the newsletter will obviously be public, so share it with your friends and your partners and your colleagues and your family members and anybody that you think this is relevant to. This is for everybody. So let me know if you have any questions from here, comments, concerns. Okay, easy enough.
Okay, so it's 2:15. We are going to take a 10-minute break. During that break, for those of you on the phone, we're going to see if we can do some stuff with the audio, so you've got a little bit of a better chance of hearing what's happening in the room. Meanwhile, if we can plan to be back here at 2:25, that'd be great. Thanks, everybody.
Steph, Emma, this is Jonathan. Can you hear me? Test.
Oh, you like they have one in there?
Yeah, where do you fit?
We are under.
Oh, okay. Okay, good. All right.
I guess it's.
Hi, Jonathan.
Well, yeah, I'm over in the
Anyway, I mentioned that in
We're very close. Yeah, we're very, very close.
How are you?
Are you
Well, no. Well, see, I'm still out of the loop. Right. How's it going?
Yeah. So this goes back to when I was whatever about this. I worked on school bill.
Yeah,
so we're Hello, Emma. Test. What we ended up doing, test. In order to ban the use of emails with people who are in mental health crisis.
Jonathan, that was you saying test, is that correct?
Yep, that was me. Mobile crisis. So I have a real except for but we did a much more narrow. Glad that this task force is on broader issues because they're really
No. I'm trying to think if there's like
Zoom participants, can you hear us?
With what? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody's just quiet. I don't know we've ever actually met in so many times.
On the phone
I know.
and cases, I don't remember which ones, but yeah, sure.
Very hard to have Monikia.
Oh, yeah.
She was finally found insane.
Yeah,
no, I actually.
Absolutely. No, I mean, if we can only have 3 people on the meeting. Closed school, I'm always here. It's like one way ticket. Do you really?
So yeah, we need, you know.
Stand.
When you all get
I know.
I'm a little in
A little more water.
No, you're fine.
Yep.
You said you're
I'm really ready for
Yes.
Oh, there was.
Response team that's embedded.
2.5 years.
I'm not
sure.
You're enjoying
That's
right.
As part of the project. We held meetings around the state, but one of them was Durango. And
talking to them.
See if you're co-located.
Gee, it lights up.
It's muted.
So you want it?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah. One of the other.
I'm going to ask them. Can anyone on the Zoom line hear the conference room?
To, try and.
Really? Hear me? I say something.
Yeah, we can hear you, or I can hear you anyway.
Italy, okay, fantastic. Sorry about all the background noise. Oh, I'm scared. We're hoping this email will get something.
I don't know. It's
So thank you so much for coming all the way from Durango.
yeah. Well, I think
Right, then people know your face, and then it's like you're when you're on.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to another meeting or two.
We're gonna need a lot.
All right. There's no way I can come to all of that.
Get people right back from the brain.
All right, we're ready to restart, everybody.
We're gonna get going. And I'm going to pass our attention to Mike Tesson, the Deputy Director of the Office of Behavioral Health, to give us a grounding and kind of what got us to this point and some of a review of some of the readings and the things that we were asked to prepare for today. So with that, we'll pass the baton.
Who's Mike Tesson and?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I can't help but give people a hard time. Mike Tesson, I'm the Deputy Director for the Office of Behavioral Health. Can y'all do me a favor? Look at your neighbor and say, man, can you believe it's only Wednesday?
Yes.
See, some of you know how to follow instructions. Now, again, now let's try it this time. Man, it is hot in here. So I've gotten the pleasure of really tackling some of the competency issues along with Robert, and it's been quite the journey. We learned a lot, and we dug into a lot of data, and that's a lot of where we focus in the department is what is the data telling us, and where do we need to focus our efforts. To give you a little bit of background about me, before I was at the Office of Behavioral Health, I was the Executive Director of Senate Bill 94 in Jefferson County, and I ran the Juvenile Assessment Center there as well. Prior to that, I worked at Anschutz Medical Campus for Arts, and I helped them run their methadone clinics, their OTPs. They had 5 clinics within the Denver metro area. Practiced problem-solving courts in the 18th Judicial District. That was a lot of fun. We got to do a better treatment. We helped develop a truancy court, really trying to help steer the judges away from detention for truancy. We all know that. Everyone nod your head. That's a terrible idea. Thank you. And then before that, I was a probation officer in the AIM. So I got to do some fun stuff. I actually got to work with Callie in the day. We had a good time in the AIM program. Got to sit next to Mike Rettenberg and have a good time. It was great. That's a little background about me, and the reason why I'm here and why I care about competency is there's times where members would reach out to Reggie or Robert, and then they'd say, Mike, call this parent. And it brings it into real sharp focus that all those names on the list are people. They're people with families that love them and care about them, trying to advocate for them. Then across your mind, what about the parents who aren't home? What about the people who don't have advocates? And so every name on that list is somebody, and love or needs them. And so that's what really drives us at the department. We all share in the same ideals. We want these people to be getting services. We know that jail is not the right place for them to be waiting for those services. And so I'm here to kind of go over some of where we are and where we're going. So the first thing is special master. Who in here knows what that means? Okay, that's good to see some hands. I saw some of this. It is not a character from Harry Potter. The folks who have pointed to us from the federal court with competencies and to really advise on what's competencies. From ground level, and they've been partnering with us. In December, we submitted regarding kind of our efforts up to date and kind of our plans moving forward, and reviewed our plan. And so really what they've done was the system and how idea, and they came up with 6 key recommendations to our initial plan. The first one was a comprehensive and cohesive competency plan. That's why all of us were here. So thank you. My hands are done. No, we can wash your hands, walk away, it's your done. No. This is the department's plan, but we need to partner with all the stakeholders. I think it's clear that we can't fix this alone. We need the state to come together, and we need all the ideas and all the resources of the state, because it can't just be one system. These are all of our clients, all of our patients, not just the departments. The next one is, the next 2 really kind of focus on the same thing: reduce emphasis on inpatient beds and increase emphasis on community. How can we get more clients into the right care in the community? Prioritizing outpatient competency. How can we get more people getting appropriately? Not everyone needs to go to inpatient. And so how do we create that system? And how do we make a system where judges feel confident in referring them to those outpatient competency services? Next one is a little bit really competency of civil liberties. And so how do I take somebody who's got a greater psychiatric need than somebody else? But it makes sense because oftentimes those people will restore faster than somebody else who might be on the list who's there for maybe some cognitive issues. And so that was one of their key recommendations, is take the people who are most sick and move them up the list. We don't want them sitting in jail. There's some people who can manage jail better than others. Last, number 5 was make better use of our data. And we all should be nodding our head. Yes, this is important. We need data to guide our decisions and help us know where we are and help us establish where we're going. And the last one was create a central system of easily accessible information for stakeholders. That shouldn't say or, that should say for. Fingers, and I hit delete accidentally. So all of this came out, and then we went into mediation with DL, right? And so really what the law has done, it hasn't said, hey, this is an issue, and we were unaware. What it did was it shined a really bright light on this issue where no one else in the state could ignore it. To the point where the governor said, let's create a committee to tackle this. That's how important this is. And so that's why it's so right on this issue, because we have people who are waiting in jail when they should be getting services. So this landed us in mediation, where we landed on the consent decree. Now there's a lot in there, and you'll see this in your book. And here are some of the key items. Was part of our plan. This one is that triage system. We did it to anybody who met that 2765 right, harm to self or others, or gravely disabled, plus a little bit extra, right? Those people where they don't quite meet the criteria, but have not meet the criteria. So we've agreed to prioritize those patients if they're identified at the competency evaluation and move them up and getting them admitted once we get that restoration order. Does that all make sense? Okay, I see a little bit of, oh, Ben, tell me.
Oh, no. And data-wise, it's about 5%, right?
So far, so we ended our competency evaluators identifying tier 1, right, which is people who meet 65 plus a little, and then tier 2, these are patients who don't have an immediate need to be admitted to a hospital. And so we implemented that in June 1. We believe our evaluators are being conservative, because that's what they do. And the rate so far has been about 40% of them have been, of those being found incompetent to proceed, meet that tier 1 criteria. So they're getting prioritized admission.
Meeting 7 days.
7 days. The next one was to develop a forensic support team. What this is in those judicial districts, we'll have single points of contact representing ODH and helping any of those stakeholders in those judicial districts understand competency services and tracking any patients in the competency system. So a judge can call, a clerk can call, DA, PD can call and say, hey, where's this patient? And you can say, oh, they're in RISE program, this is where they are. We're still in treatment. So that was one of the points that we agreed was necessary. The other thing we're hoping the forensic support team can do is advocate for those people who should be in community and to partner with the Bridges program and talk about what can we do to get this person in the community? What does the judge need to see to feel confident to keep this person in the community? The next one is really focusing on that community-based restoration treatment. We all agree this is a great idea. The next one was Interim. Go ahead.
Data-wise, for the community-based, when we did an analysis of all the people that were court-ordered for inpatient, roughly 15 to 17% were low acute and low criminal.
Yeah.
So that's taking beds, people who are high acute or high risk to pop. So that's really where we're focusing. We came to an agreement. Target, we're going to start with 10% increase and keep going from there. But about 15% have misdemeanors, petty offenses, and not meet a high level of treatment.
Yeah.
So not only is it taking away beds, but he doesn't need to be there, is there?
Yep, and then they're in a really restrictive setting when they don't need to be.
Yeah.
Robert, clarify, is 15 current inpatients at the state hospital?
It's a state hospital, the RISE program, which is at Arapahoe, and we have 18 beds. I don't know what we're calling it older, but
still RISE,
which is a joint effort with the sheriffs to have sort of we basically contract with a provider to provide psychiatric care, and they contract with the sheriff to provide the security, but it's located within the jail. But they're separate units, they're treatment units. They don't look treatment-wise, they're all that different from the hospital. Just where they're located is different. So.
I have one follow-up question. We talk about low.
That's another. I think I'm saying. Remember the table I made. It's like another 3 to 4% if you add on top of that.
The low.
Yeah.
Okay.
So all in all, I think it's about 18, 19% is probably community. Okay. I broke out felonies 5s and 6. The felony 4s get really tricky, and we should talk about that as a group because felony. You spin on a police officer, that felony 4. It's one that's that actually broke out. We broke out when we broke felony 4 by itself because it's somewhat misleading because it's everything from actually assaulting someone to having a psychotic episode that you spit on a cop and you get charged with a felony 4.
So can you tell me that? So there is a threshold, though. I mean, at this point, we're not confident at 100% to community, but we know that there's a lot there. And there's a lot that we can leverage. And so part of it's about that screening and identifying, and then it's about creating, being responsive to the culture of the community in that judicial district, and what is their threshold, and how can we influence that in a meaningful way. The next one is the interim mental health treatment. This is to screen, treat, assess, and monitor pretrial detainees who've been identified for a restoration treatment, and really to monitor them to see if they're deteriorating and if they should be expedited for admission. Or somebody's actually stabilized to the point to where maybe you should be talking to the courts about moving them to the community. So this is about how can we help them now? How can we treat them now? We're not focusing on restoration treatment, but if you can get them on the right medications and the right treatment, that might expedite their restoration when they actually do go for restoration treatment. That makes, so we're really using this as a way to really keep our eyes on the patients and then make sure that they're where they need to be.
We're building off of Senate Bill 18250 for that, so we're not recreating a program. There's a jail-based behavioral health services program in place. Now, Senate Bill 18250 was to adding mental health. It was always substance use, but adding mental health in rural areas. 220 to help on some.
So we want to make sure that every jail has access to treatment services for these. Data management team. So this is a place Martinez is in, and making sure that we're able to extract the right data at the right time. We actually have a data management that is in the binder. Some really quick, extract, clean, put in here, and we know what's good, follow it, and then we just automatically extract from that warehouse. So we set up, we think that that's the right direction for us as a department. It's easy for us to let the community and the judicial or any of our.
We continue to receive that monthly report.
I don't think that that was part of the plan. We just wanted to reporting compliance and what we're submitting to DLC. In the special review or anything where we should be focused on efforts. What we've been doing to share.
Department gets a vote, the special masters get a vote on how they're listed. I think right now there's some common interest in housing components. One of the biggest barriers for people when we talk about low-level charges, low acuity, a lot of those folks are homeless. Right.
Speaking of data request, could we actually receive the here are all the individuals you're seeing, their breakdown on like a behavioral health scale and then also on the criminal justice scale. So how you came up with that 18 to 19%. And how
yeah, I can do that. I can get the table. I actually put it together when we were talking to special masters because I wanted to know, and I'll put it broken out by, we had to docs the hospital, basically review the charts and say whether they felt like they met a 2765 admissions or not.
Seclusion restraint. Identify somebody who's going to have one of those in that 3-month period probably needs a hospital level of care, even if they might not be.
Yes, we'll share it the next meeting.
Data. I just want to make sure it's accurate that anyone out of Lake County is
isn't getting any services while they're in jail for interim mental health services.
I just want to make sure as we go through the process, the data we're getting back is accurately reflecting what the current condition is. Yep.
Great, Michael.
I did.
By the way, Michael, jokes. We're waiting for the one of the goals is increasing restoration, and I mentioned the percentage that are inpatient. So we're at referral right now.
Average.
We were at like.
So the next thing I wanted to show you. Oh, it does. Here, I'll just.
Okay.
You have a printout, Mike? Everybody has a printout, right?
I don't have it.
You want one? You want one?
I'm going to steal one. Young shit. Thank you.
I think it's can do it for you. Let's take us over there.
So if we can go ahead and go through all these and go to the competency evaluation slide right here. So what we showed you here was what is the history of the amount of competency evaluation referrals that we get per year. As you can see is that things were kind of flat for those first couple of years. And over the last 5 to 6 years, we've really seen an exponential growth. Now that line is the total number of individuals referred. That red is the total number of people referred for jail-based or community-based. That's the way that we broke it out. We're going to dive into a little bit more and separate out community-based, jail-based.
Mike, can I say a little bit more? I mean, I want to assume, I don't want to assume that everybody understands what a competency evaluation is.
Okay.
Right. So, and I'm assuming most people know, but just in case you don't, when you go to court, you get a crime, you have to go to court. You go to court. Somebody raises your ability to understand the court process because you're mental health or you're cognitive or something cognitive related. When you're in court, if that happens at that point, the CDHS gets court ordered to do an evaluation. Most evaluations are done in the jail or in the community. Some are inpatient, but that was due to a legislative change a couple of years ago. 28 days to complete that. 28 days, 30. I guess 28 days to complete that evaluation. Finish the evaluation. Everybody goes back to court. Judge and people on the court side disagree. They typically agree with whatever the doc recommends. If they disagree, they can ask for evaluation in which is in a separate process. If they agree that the person's incompetent to proceed, then the department is court ordered to restore the person so that they understand the court process. So they have the point of, this is where we get a little into the full-blown treatment and getting to the place where you want your loved ones to be treated. You can understand the problem, treat. Make sure we get to the point where we understand the process of court. Court, but I want that's important to know. So this is the evaluation part. They found incompetent to proceed. Then court order store really gives a
only a million. That's the key. This is what we're seeing when we're looking at competency. Now, the reason why we see a decrease in inpatient in 2016 was House Bill 161410, which really created the assumption that competency evaluation should be done in the community or in the location where they're being in custody. So we saw that actually had an impact on the number of competency evaluations that we received. See your hand.
So obviously there's a gap between done and didn't see that in action items. Is there also a focus on increasing the
Yes.
Okay.
We're asking for more evaluators. So we're looking at the number of evaluations that we have FT on top of that. And we have like a big assumption of how many assessments a full evaluator should be done. We've done that with what things we're doing as far as cases for medications. Most are between 10 to 12. But we want to do a time study and dive into that information.
The preference is to reduce the referrals. That's
right. Absolutely. If we can go on to the next slide. I didn't just break the remote, obviously. There we go. So this is the wait list. We look at this on a daily basis. The red indicates the number of people who, an individual who's waiting over 30 days. What you see in August of last year was an individual on who had a hard time getting for us. And so we managed to hire a full-time evaluator on the Western Slope to help us out and kind of help us mitigate some of those issues. But this gives us a snapshot of where we are with jail-based competency evaluations. Next slide.
Just throwing things.
Didn't throw it very hard. I'm over here. This is our inpatient competency wait list. So the blue number under 28, the red indicates the number over 28. You'll see on March 25th, we have a little red there. That's our hard to lower. So we got admitted on day 29. And what you see in June is actually a patient who hasn't been medically cleared. We're working with to the hospital for their inpatient competency evaluation. So although there's red, we next slide. They take about 30 days historically. Over the last, we've been able to decrease that. We've been mindful about who we admit to the hospital. To proceed the 100 days. Now, in states, longer. We're going to continue to get that data, see what we can do find currently in competence. We were feeling really good in December. Things were starting to die. And we were like, man, I'm making. Us manage that. We can all.
This year also, something that we've not seen before is a spike in female referrals.
Yeah.
The top, that's two challenges. It's like 50 days male, female, and how long they've been waiting on the list.
So that is a revelation. It's a new bottleneck that we've been struggling with. The females are lower. As you can imagine, most of our beds are dedicated to males. We have some co-ed that are outside of the Hawkins building that are moderate security. So we're looking at every opportunity we have to leverage every bed and to ensure that nobody's necessarily even just because they're female. Go ahead.
So how does this apply with items?
Okay, so great.
Help
Where are we at with
set that.
Yeah, that's been put to rest. All those are all. That was part of the agreement that we came to. We'll see is that we won't do that. We'll leave those beds for all the civil patients, and we'll just continue to use strategies.
Well, the 94 existing civil funding. 22.
It's on another slide. So the 94 beds.
What's that?
Thank you, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Is that we didn't, it wasn't anything we wanted to do. We never wanted to look that away from the civil. And we're just like, if we're going to comply, this is one mechanism that we can do. We agreed with DLC that wasn't our best strategy, and we pulled back, and we found some other. That's why we went into mediation.
Can we pause to see if Zoom has comments or questions?
Everyone at once.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
So for those of you who aren't familiar with Zoom, when you unmute phone while you're on Zoom, if you're using phone audio versus computer audio, it doesn't necessarily unmute your Zoom account. So you need to unmute your phone and then press star 67, I believe. Star 6.
Star 6.
Star 6? Yeah. Okay. So there's a mute function in your computer.
And feel free when you get
Always chat. Stand over the line.
The next slide. Looking for what are doing. Talk to why everybody, and everyone's like, oh, we just throw all these things into a document. We're like, but we did that. Not everybody. So we need a model. And so what the Judge, I believe you mentioned it earlier. This is about people who are struggling with mental illness or substance use disorders who are involved in the justice system. And we said, well, why don't we just modify this to meet our needs? And so that's what we did. And so what we have here is at Intercept 0, this is the community services. The department believes that with a healthy set of community services, we can prevent people from ever having law enforcement contact. And that if people are healthy, their needs are going to get met. And even if they do, health needs are going to be won't. So we're hoping that with Intercept 0, if we do well here, we're going to reduce the amount of people having interaction with Intercept 1, which is going to be law enforcement contact. Now, the same principle here is that when we can equip law enforcement with the right tools and the right resources, they can actually divert people out of the justice system and into the behavioral health system. All of us in this room believe that there's a lot of people in the justice system who actually belong in the behavioral health system. Everyone, I just need to make sure there was agreement. Not, thank you. And then when we move in, when someone gets past that intercept, they end up in initial detention or the court process. There's a lot of options that still exist there. They have pretrial, there's DA diversion programs. There's a lot of things that can be done in each one of these intercepts to get someone in that system. Now, once we end up in competent justice system, I'm not going to dive deep in your binder, in depth, giving you a quick narrative of these interventions, what's available, what are they, all that fun stuff. But as you'll notice, community intercept 0 at the beginning, and because people are going, and then you have services in the community in a meaningful way. And so this isn't just in the end, it's about
I'm going to invoke a conversation that Judge Seamus and I had. Scope of our task here.
Mm-hmm.
Are we looking at all the system, because some of those points are actually competency, but all of it's related. So.
Let me get to it. Okay. Promise. Don't raise your hand again.
Okay.
Okay. So when you're going through this and you're looking at each intercept, so we're just trying to create a model where we can see in a vision of us. What does the system look like? We're thinking about gaps that exist. These intercepts should give you a good frame of reference on where to start. I have a lot of committees for all you have, and when there's not a document to start from, in the first 6 months, right? So we wanted to give you a healthy starting point. Came up with this competency intercept. Anticipate other states. So I'm going to try and get it copyrighted, and I'm going to charge everybody. What's that?
I think Arizona already did it.
And as you'll see, we have a couple of programs down here at the bottom that transition over multiple intercepts. The Bridges program, that's the judicial, where they are experiencing mental health system who are finding the judicial mental health service that's available, providing some direction. And the forensic support team acted that complement from the OBH side for everything competency. See those two single really interact. Meeting with Jennifer Turner later this month to go over some of the responsibility matrix, make sure that the rules, roles, and lanes are clear. That we don't step on top of each other, but great. So, and then across the bottom, we had data because we need to be collecting data across. We need to be at our data, use that to help us drive good decision making. Let's move on next. So when we're looking at, when I'm trying to down the competency issue in the lawsuit to its most basic form, This is of people waiting in jail to access inpatient restoration. Now, there's three things that directly those beds, access to those beds, these accessed. First one is inpatient court orders. So that's the first thing. So if we get a ton of inpatient court orders, as you saw on those previous slides with those on access, it's going to create a wait list. Next is going to be 100 days versus 100. Well, that 100-day patient all of a sudden has space for everybody else. So how long they stay matters. So we have is all about unity. The need is getting met in the least restrictive care, the better we're going to do as a system. One, it's ethically the right thing to do for the patient. It keeps them closer to the communities, and it creates the services that they get have to develop and establish. So what we can do to get a community is in our best interest, and it reduces the patient early death. We're focusing efforts to work the whole state, and that everyone in the state of Colorado has access to community-based restoration treatment. To date, we have 84% of the counties covered. We still have some gaps that's included in the plan, and we're working to fill those gaps and seeing what we can do. The next one would be education.
My question, can you back up to the other slide? I have a question about sort of digging into the weeds a little bit on those 3 points.
What I'm doing right now.
Yeah, the competing interest bids. Are you going to tap into NGRIs? Obviously, how fast we move NGRIs out of the hospital, permanently. That, if you will, they're these peripheral were important to the discussion.
We touch on those in the plan, and they do have an impact, because when we have the not guilty by reason of insanity or someone who's opined permanently incompetent to proceed, they stay in the bed.
Yeah.
And some of them are actually ready for discharge, but we don't always have appropriate residential settings that are willing to accept them, or we have guardianship barriers. There's a lot of barriers that can come up to getting some discharge into an appropriate the report, but I'll touch on a
about half the beds that have, right? Beds that are not for restoration, that are long stayers, basically. They're PID, I think half the bed. There's an IDD unit that has some as well, but that's about half the beds at SIMHIP.
And we have the population of SIMHIP broken down by legal status in that plan.
Now, Senate 19.223 does address some maximum lengths of stay for permanently incompetent to proceed. A few of the a handful, but it's pretty.
Yeah. I see another hand. Okay. So the next thing is that we have to really make sure that the stakeholders are educated, that the judges, the attorneys are all aware about community restoration that are available in the community. And that's where really the program and the forensic support team are going to partner up to ensure that those services are aware. And that's what in the community. How can we develop more comprehensive programs where they can send someone who's maybe a little bit higher risk, someone who has a little more acuity, where their services can be wrapped around and they're coordinating all that care. And so we've been exploring a couple of pilots on what we can do to increase the amount of people in going to community-based restoration treatment. Do you want to dive into any of those pilots now?
Yeah, so how many months ago I met with the judge of Denver and the other asked, like, what do you need to feel comfortable to refer? What do you need to see? So then, and the pilot's going to have MHC psychiatric care. Denver pretrial is going to supervision that was built off of pretrial trial supervision is the big. Housing is still going to be a challenge, but we're hoping that will result in it. Are by far our highest referrals.
Yeah, we think I think it's 20 or 22% of all of our patient restoration referrals come from Denver. So we're trying to see if we can create a pilot, and if we can make it work and it's giving us good outcome and good data, we want to replicate that throughout the state and leverage other programs that exist throughout the state. I know Montgomery County has AIM, and I know that Boulder has PACES. So there's other programs that we can modify or leverage to help expand and grow. People in the giving their needs. Next one is we want to really improve the inconsistent for competency about. The next one is inpatient or. Now, if we're making a recommendation for case restoration services, that and we can get that. And actually, sorry, back. The other thing that we're doing is we're focusing more clear in what laser focus, they're getting their needs met, and so hopefully they can get restored faster. Next. Again, that point of contact is going to be people who are going to be following up on patients, checking up with them while they're in the jail setting, up with that interim mental services to see if they're compensating or if they're stabilized. Right setting for the right treatment. And the last one is going to be the mental health, interim mental health treatment. That's the next one. It won't work. So what we're doing here is that we're really going to be leveraging JBBS, jail-based behavioral services. When that initially rolled out, it was focused primarily on SUD, substance use disorders. And we're now going to be using that that already exists and include those mental health services for those who are involved in competency services. Next. Thanks for length of stay.
Do you mind if I just do it?
Go for it.
Okay.
So regarding fast tracks, so that what happens is that we have to do competency evaluations, or they sometimes call them restoration vows. Well, what if I just have my evaluation, I'm found incompetent, and then a week later, I'm competent? Why should I have to wait 83 more days, right? So their length of stay is going to be longer, they're going to be in a state that's necessary, and they're going to be hopefully used. So we're leveraging the fast track program, increasing the number of referrals that we have, ensuring that those are quality referrals and that we're doing those evaluations quickly, and that if full-time competent, that we move them back to court. The next one is that this is really about ensuring that we have good documentation so that evaluators can see that the patient is making progress, and what barriers still exist, and making sure that documentation is clear and capturing everything that's regarding the treatment plan. So we want to strengthen the documentation. How do we improve discharge? This is not just for our restoration patients. This is going to be for people who have been opined permanently incompetent to proceed, those who've been moved to a civil status, so their case was dropped and now full patient. We don't just go out on the street, just to ensure that the appropriate residential setting, and that they have all the services they need when they discharge from the hospital. And the last one is they're not guilty by reason of insanity. Some of those patients, Robert and Richard have pointed out, some of them are going to be with us for a very, very long time. But for those who can be discharged, let's look at what residential settings they need, what services they need, and let's help get them discharged, because that creates space for other patients in need. Next. This is the number of inpatient beds. And I think historically, the department has focused more on the number of beds. And really, this is part of it. We can't ignore the other opportunities that exist too. All of them matter. And so this. And so this is the plans that we have moving forward. So we're going to be implementing a new unit at SIMHIP. It's going to net us 42 beds. That's going to go operational December 2019. We already are working through our personnel process to make sure that we have people hired and we're ready to go. Working on those units. And then we have at the SimHIP L2, this is going to be an expansion within a high security forensic unit. Where we'll have 2 beds where we're serving some of the highest need patients in the hospital. The last one is 3 cottages at Fort Logan. This is going to net 44 beds, will be restoration beds until the need no longer exists.
So that's the real opportunity. I mean, the opportunity for, you know, we were able to get funding because the lawsuit came at a little time during the legislation. We really use that to express people really understand how real this is. If we can get this tackled, and I think that's a real silver lining opportunity in all this. Every metro area based on the population size. So this could be a way to get there. If we can solve the competency issue, now we can convert the beds to civil.
And a lot of solving that competency issue is getting a lot of people in the community reducing their length of stay. And that's how we convert these back to civil, and we can serve the state from a different perspective and hopefully prevent more people from ever ending up in the competency system.
Elaborate a little bit on what you said. You were already putting things in place to be ready with staffing. Can you elaborate on what you're doing there?
Yeah, so we have a long process for hiring, and there's a lot of clearance that we have to already read all, make sure that everything was queued up. We pushed them through. The start, so I believe that their start shooting for is October, so that by the time those beds do online, we're not scrambling. With all new, terrible. Yeah.
And the training.
Yeah, and there's plenty of training that comes on when you're a new employee. You have CDHS, and the hospital orientation. There's security and safety, the precautions.
And just ask for clarification on the acronyms.
Oh yeah, which acronym?
Well, I'm just unless we have a glossary, maybe that's a good idea.
There is.
We can just.
But Zoom doesn't have it.
Well, SimHIP is one of them on here, and CMHIFL.
Okay, so SimHIP is the Colorado Mental Institute in Pueblo. So that is the large hospital that's located in Pueblo. We have 455 beds there that were licensed through CDPHE. And then SimHIFL, that's the Colorado Mental Health Institute. You like that? Colorado Mental Health Logan. That's in the Denver metro area.
L and F, anything, or just
okay.
Letters.
Yeah, they're, yeah.
So how many new staff are you expecting for all of these new beds?
It's over 60.
Wow.
Yeah.
What are you doing for recruitment? That's a lot of mental health professionals.
Everything we can. We have a talent acquisition team that's focused on that. We're working with the local community college to ensure that we're getting people hired. So we're working a lot to ensure that we're getting people in quickly, efficiently, and that we're retaining quality staff. Judge, I saw your hand.
Yeah, just want to, I think I might have misunderstood, but our greatest success is really doing the competency evaluations in the local jail. But not, and so, but the education, how do those fit into where you see that fitting into the model?
You can go back to that evaluation slide with the 3 lines. It's going to take a lot of clicks. Give me just a minute.
And then the other question while they're clicking is, I understand that part of the objective is to get them opined to be competent, but a lot of the people we're seeing are cyclical, and so you may find them to be competent, but by the time they have the next court date, not so sure anymore. And so what's the check or balance for that so that it's not just a short-term competency, but a long-term competency?
And that's where forensic support team comes in line. So when we know somebody's competent, we're going to be making sure that that communication is coming back. We're going to be working with the Bridges program and see what we do to get people move their court dates. The other thing is that a lot of states have embraced confidence pockets, where you judge and you set times and set pockets where we focus on competency. Which is because I worked in judicial, judging competency really well. What am I doing here? I mean, you would it be if you could have a judge who really So understanding how managing those and getting back to that courtroom, and so that's a little bit quicker.
At least for the districts that have a large number.
Absolutely. You can't do Go ahead.
Quick question. You said 405. How many beds total at
94.
Thank you.
And at the RISE program, there is 114 now between Arapahoe and Boulder. Moses.
Yeah, I think sort of adding on to the judges, notice in your interim model, the restoration treatment is one phrase. And I was wondering if maybe at some point, probably not today, we'll talk about what the model is to get treatment with the restoration.
What does restoration treatment look like?
And how do we make sure that people are restored and treated and stabilized and that we have the whole thing?
Yeah, that's going to be a deeper dive.
Of course.
One of the biggest disconnects currently. Yeah, it's at the psychiatric treatment and the restoration, because it's different. The restoration is the education part. Psychiatric treatment is psychiatric, not necessarily.
In your model here.
There might be.
You want to go back to the model?
Yeah, we can go back to the intercept. Yeah, so what other questions do you all have about the intercept model?
It's a lot. I know it's a lot. And you mentioned, I think, the committee and conversation as to where your question about where is. I think it's all on the table. Caveat though, I mean, it's particularly the wider we get, we need to make sure what we focus on is going to influence the population we're talking about. Talking about treatment for everybody, that our recommendation is going to impact the group we're talking about. And that may be the case. I mean, I feel the same way about prevention. It's really helpful. It's really good. But the wider the net gets, the harder I want to make an impact.
Absolutely. And so when you're looking at each intercept, you really should be looking at those three levers that we talked about earlier, right? The number of referrals, the length of stay, and the number of beds. So when we're looking at each intercept, how is it we directly or indirectly going to influence one of those levers at each one of these intercepts? So that should be the lens that you're looking through. Directly have at least three levels each intercept.
This is the data. Is there an ability to, at those three levers, look at the clinical and justice acuity, so we are getting the sense of like, oh, the high acuity patients are, you know, taking longer in duration, they're going to those beds versus, you know.
We could take a, I don't know. I mean, when I did research I was talking about earlier,
we did.
I did by hand. I'm like, we did by hand. We
implemented an electronic health. Raise your hand. Some steps to where you appropriately, and then to make sure they do the people who tend to stay longer. A lot of it falls under some of those cognitive issues. And that's a patient with IDP or somebody with those patients tend to stay with us a little bit longer.
You like a sample, I think that's fine.
Regarding the data thing, is the electronic health record that both the state hospitals accessible to that Colorado Health Information Exchange? Goreo.
That's a long-term plan.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Joy.
You mentioned residential treatment beds. What are examples of those?
Inpatient treatment beds?
No, so you're talking about step down beds.
Yeah. So transitional residential?
Sure.
So
it pretty much doesn't exist.
Right. I'm like, no.
But I know where there might be $10 million that we could use to build some of that.
Don't get ahead of yourself. So part of my job is on state and the state, where we're hoping that we're going to get some help from the federal government. This is an issue throughout the country right now. There's no step down process. I mean, without stepping, I mean, you can step down. I mean, then yeah, there's really not a great transition from inpatient to community in a way that if assertive community treatment is not intense enough, that there's a little gap in there.
What are the number beds look like for boarding homes these days? There's something that happened like it was around Medicaid in the late 90s, early 2000s, where licensing or something happened and boarding homes just had to close.
Right.
And I think that's a real tragedy, having worked in the community mental health center at that area, place of stabilization. So out of the state hospital. So I was just curious if any.
And the IMD
That barrier.
version takes out a lot of facilities that are duly licensed.
So as you go through, because right, you're talking about two intercepts, right? You're talking about the intercept at the beginning. So how can we prevent people from entering and how can we help people exit out? I saw your hand.
Yes, I might be jumping the gun, but if I could just add that in terms of those step down programs, when those conversations are had, one of the medical conditions, history against robbery or any of those things that exclude the soapbox.
I agree. Thanks.
Okay, and we're gonna go flying through it.
Yeah.
All the way.
Keep going. Oh, go back up to the top. This one I do need. One more. Oh, it got deleted somehow. Okay, so in your binder, if you open it up, the first thing you're going to see is the draft of a long-term, cohesive, comprehensive. The way that's broken out is each intercept, we're going to review services that are listed here in narrative to give you an idea of the community. By no means do we think we captured everything under the sun in Colorado, but we did our best to identify those that are most critical to this issue. Those, and then at the end, it'll say recommendation for the to consider. We're not trying to point you in a direction, we're trying to think about what kind of recommendations you want to consider. What do you have the biggest impact? If you can only make one change, what change would have the biggest impact? It's really meant to. We go through each intercept. We talk about data plan briefly, but we do include the data in there as well. And you can go ahead and run through the rest of those. We have a glossary with just a bunch of acronyms because we are acronym friendly. I'm sure you all are as well in your home agencies. Data management go into more detail than what's included in that plan. We have our process maps which walk through the competency evaluation steps and restoration treatment. There are many steps. At some point, I would imagine we're going to have to come back and walk through those with you. Process maps are never easy. The first time you look at it, you go, oh my God, what is this trying to tell me? But when somebody walks through it, it's easier to understand. We can do that another time. Then we have the consent decree, which through everything that DLC and the department agreed to. So the reason why we put these binders together, we didn't include everything, but we wanted to give you the essentials and something that you can just grab. We put your names on it because we think a new pillow. I expect all of you to sleep with this every night we have, and to really fall in love with this problem in the same way that we as well. And then after that, we're going to have a special master's response to our initial plan. That's going to include those 6 recommendations that I went initially, what they were recommending, because a lot of their recommendations influence the consent decree. And then after that, we have that new month submitted, 19-23, which is going to walk through that legislation that really heavily on competency, what we can and can't do, and all those timelines.
And the special master response really framed what direction you want to here, about what direction.
Yeah. And so I know it looks like a lot. Some of this is going to be referenced, and you're probably never going to read it. The things I would encourage you to read the plan. I know it's 70 pages, but a lot of those pages, they're not filled all the way. They're half pages as a graph and a little narrative above it. And also the way it's formatted, you can go through it easily. I took it home to my wife, read. Does this make sense? Like, yeah, it means this. I was like, yeah. She doesn't know anything about competency. And so it's not that difficult of a read. Everything's lined out and mapped out. It should make relative sense. But if there's anything we can do to clarify, we're happy to come back and provide that clarification, provide any additional to guide you along the way. And I think that's it. What questions do y'all have for me? Other ones you already asked. Go ahead.
And process-wise, are the recommendation?
Take this on. We take
What about this? Where did you get there? Different. We will take it back to the special master, who was going to present in a couple meetings, because we still have to work with them and make sure it's but pretty in-depth draft that exists, but there's room for changes and adding and modifying and telling us what's wrong, what's right.
I get it.
No. With that, as
Okay.
we said earlier.
Literally hold it everywhere.
No, we want to get everybody a copy. And make sure
you get a folder, a reading file folder for this committee.
Folder that we start documents in there. We want to overwhelm this meeting, so it's coming in phases. So working in this binder is not going to be by tomorrow. Yeah.
But the things that you to focus your efforts on is the plan, and I think the consent decree is also worth reading. I know that you think a federal legal document is probably really painful to read. It's actually not. It's broken up really easy. Digest, you understand what they're trying to get at. There's a couple points, but it's a document to read. So if I was going to encourage you to focus your decree, and the rest of it I would use as a reference. Things. Anything?
A
Go
quick
ahead, Brenda.
question. So the lack of women's beds for women, and you're trying to find beds in the short term till beds are added. What's happening with the people, the women that are eventually getting beds, and possibly men being discharged, or how are they getting those beds?
So let me rephrase it. I want to make sure that I capture it correctly. It's what are we doing to address the short-term issue while we're waiting for other beds to come on? What are we doing to address those beds for females?
Correct.
So we're going through several different scenarios and options of how can we create more beds in a way that is meaningful for the population. We're working with the hospital to see what options exist, seeing if we can move some males to another unit and maybe add another wing of females to one of the moderate risk units so we can have more female patients. There's a lot of options that we're going through and a lot of scenarios to see what is the most meaningful and can be executed more quickly than others.
Okay. There's also a set of beds, 2 contracts that we're working on with private hospitals, one being Denver Health, on trying to get a contract in place for some beds too, for people who do meet the inpatient, try to get those females placed in some beds as well.
Some of the women that might be waiting could be transferred to Denver possibly.
Yeah, we're working on it. We have to run it by the special masters because but if they need psychiatric stabilization, yes.
They're not even in Pueblo yet.
Yeah.
They're in
Pueblo.
jail.
They're in jail.
Yeah.
They're waiting in their local jail until they're admitted.
All right.
Yeah. What other questions y'all have for me? Thank you for having me. You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Oh, you forgot your last slide.
Oh, no, skip that slide.
Okay.
I know.
All right. We wanted to be as nimble as we could about how we use these last few minutes of our time together to spark discussion, make sure that questions were answered. We had organized a small group opportunity that I just don't think we have time for and break out, we'll be out of time. But I think really what that small group discussion was intended to focus you on was, do you know, after listening to Mike, after listening to Robert and Allison, do you know why you're here? What the continuing to get for this week. And I would love for you to do that. Then you can email those questions and we can continue to clear, because we don't have time to kind of get this
plastic. They are on a law enforcement part to drop some and get the kit they need. I would love to see something like that in Colorado. Attorneys about pretrial diversion for lower offended crimes and stuff like that. In treatment, substance use, working with community health centers, mental health centers, and all that. But we have to change our law.
Would it make sense to give Catherine a few minutes at our next meeting or at some future meeting to talk about what she's trying to do?
We can do that. And as far as the curriculum, the Senate Bill 223 actually requires a group to come together to review the adult curriculum, as well as the training. So that is one of the charges for the department to do.
I know this has been a lot, and it hasn't been the most get up and go interactive, and we're going to change that as we move forward. I think it was just so important to be able to hear all of this and ground and level set as we get started. So tolerance for that, appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
I'd like to offer maybe before the winter, maybe we can have one meeting in Pueblo, and we get that on the calendar as early as possible. Travel. We'll be happy to show you portions. I don't like giving tours a lot of people on the units because it disrupts the care, but we can walk the hallways and you can get a sense of the hospital, the forensic hospital down there.
Can I ask one more?
Absolutely.
Just as a person that lives by a crazy calendar, the sooner we can get like set days out, the easier it's going to make for a lot of people who already have their hands in a lot of pots.
Absolutely. I hear you. We're working on it. That we had kind of a understatement to say a very, very rapid start to the work of these task force, and Summer and her team have done an incredible job trying to get the ball rolling, and we're going to work towards getting some standing meetings and booked out, so you'll probably be able to know where you're going to be in December soon. But we're trying to match space and time, but we're really working on it. So I appreciate it as we do that. And maybe a cooler room. Yeah.
Could you talk a little more about what the product looks like? Because I've heard two dates. There's a December deadline, and then we're talking about extending, it sounds like, Robert, into June. And I was just wondering, so in terms of the fact that we're a subcommittee to the overall task force, could you talk a little bit about what the product looks like? Who are we as a group submitting that product to? Who's doing the note keeping and creating whatever that product looks like, et cetera? Maybe you have that plan for next time, but I just...
No, and I'm going to defer to Robert a little bit. I mean, because there's kind of a combination of things. So I'll let you take it first and fill in gaps.
I think the first document I have here, the plan here, the product, that is due December. Now, I think there will be leniency from the federal court if we say, this is what we're thinking, we're not going to be able to solve it by December. We're thinking IDD law changes and things like that. As long as we flush it out pretty well and make it a part of the plan, and acknowledging that we might need to go more in depth for June. I think for me, in my head, this plan here we have has to be done by December. But there's things like broader jail, mental health jail diversion stuff that we can keep carrying on with for the larger task force, for the blueprint of behavioral health in Colorado. There's sort of two opportunities there, but this one being this product here being the first responsibility.
So this really should be our focus, is the report that's here, looking for gaps, looking for strengths in it, looking for emphasis in some way that we can help advise as a group to improve the document in many ways. Okay.
Completely lost my computer. I have no idea. This is not going to happen again. I'm going to make sure that I have more control over technology. But we want to make sure we have open space for public comment before we close the meeting. So there's a few of you who hung in here with us, and make sure that you have an opportunity to ask questions or to make any comments that you might have so that we can address those. There's only 3 of you, so I get to look you right in the eye.
Intense eye contact. No, I'm good. That was good discussion.
All right. So in closing, we thought we would just sort of run the room rapidly to get a little bit of a pulse on how you're feeling at the end of the day. So just kind of 2 words to describe a reflection of your experience today. Certainly, we are open to constructive criticism. You can give it to me now, you can give it to me in an email, but if you give it to me now, it has to be in 2 words. We're gonna get around the table and get everybody out of this really working space. So Richard, can I start with you again?
I was going to ask you to start.
All right, I'll start with Joy. She's been so nice to me, she's let me hover over her.
I really appreciate that we have a report to start with that brings my anxiety down.
Ready to do something. It's a good intro.
I'm slightly overwhelmed and grateful to be here and excited that it's on its way.
I'm excited.
Interested, still concerned.
Overwhelmed, but interested.
Competing priorities. I'd say I'm a mixture of concerned and excited.
I too am relieved that we're starting with something.
Happy.
What a great way to
overwhelmed and excited.
Living this for 2 years now and still overwhelmed, so you're not alone. And open to ideas.
Cautiously optimistic.
All the above, but the cynic in me has this lingering thing in the back of my head that we're a group of well-meaning people who want to improve the system, but the function of competency is to bring people from a state of having some issues or crisis or something and make it so that the system can legally and ethically prosecute them. And if that's what our function is, I think we might want to take a step back and look at what is it that we're really trying to do. And I think that's a question somewhere in this process we need to be asking ourselves and conversing about.
So with that, overwhelmed and excited.
I'm anxious and inspired.
Well, I'm hungry and cautiously excited, I would say, at this point.
I've been working on this for a while too, so I'm glad that all the information is concise, or at least the issues are more concise.
I would say overwhelmed and motivated.
I'm ready.
I'm overwhelmed and excited.
I'm excited to get started.
I get to go last.
Yeah.
So no, I'm very hopeful. I want to remain, if you will, truthful to the complexity of the problem.
Allison, Robert, anything else you want to say in closing?
Thank you, and let's. Anybody that knows me, I'm all for dropping a grenade in it and putting it back together the right way. So whatever you guys think is what we're missing, I know we're missing stuff in our report. Be vocal, speak up. Consumers, speak up, because it's been the most helpful for me in the last 2 years in what direction to go.
And I want to say thank you, and don't feel concerned that you are overwhelmed. It is a lot, but it can be broken into reasonable pieces, and I really think that we can do it.
Before we wrap, somehow the computer, I think it's haunted, something. Notes will be circulated, so you'll have notes and minutes from the meeting. And the next committee meeting is already scheduled July 22nd at 9:30. And it's going to be at the CU Medicine Building, which means that honestly, if there's technical difficulties, you can absolutely blame me because it's where I live every day. So we better get it cleaned up for that. And we'll get directions and parking information to you.
Given the last minute scheduling, if you can't make it and you're reading this and you want to contribute, you want to add things, or when you get the agenda, there's things you want to add, please email it, send it to the facilitators. Just because you can't make it doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to contribute. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
These are how we are moving.
I'm not really sure.
Homework.
No, getting mental health and probably wrapping up purchase. So all of that is
I can't email me out reference, but the original article that kind of ended will promote the percent model.
Might email you.
I can get
I can